So once you've had your mug constructed and you've smoothed all of the edges, it's time to apply the underglaze to the surface of the mug so that we can then scratch through it. So you want to select your color of underglaze and make sure you stir it really well. We're going to use the slip brush out of your kit, not the brush with the blue handle. And we're going to first make sure that your mug is at the appropriate stage of dryness. So I'm looking at my mug and I want to make sure that it is leather hard. So it's not going to flex if I apply a little bit of pressure to the mug. It's not going to move. And if I press my fingernail against the clay, it's going to make a mark, so I can still mark the clay. But if I scratch the bottom of the clay, it's not going to make any dust. That would be leather hard. Important, it cannot get any drier than this for the remainder of the project. Now let's apply the underglaze. I've already stirred this underglaze up really well. It can get gelatinous or jelly-like in the cup, and so you want to make sure that you always stir really well first. And the brush I'm using is the brush with the yellow handle from your kit. Many of you use it for your slip brush. I don't want to use the brush with the blue handle because the bristles are too firm and don't allow the underglaze to go on thick enough. And so I'm applying my underglaze all in the same direction. So I'm moving from bottom to top, and I'm making sure I take my time and really spread out the underglaze so that it is even. What I'm trying to avoid is the kind of ridges or excess lumps of underglaze as I move my brush across, which will create kind of bumps and ridges on the outside of the mug. So I want to make sure that I'm spreading the underglaze out really evenly and moving all in my brush strokes in that same direction to try and get as uniform of color as possible. I'm going to work my way around the rest of the mug, taking my time to make sure that I get good coverage and my brush strokes are going all in the same direction. You can do the top edge of the mug. We don't do the inside and we don't do the bottom. And you can also do, in addition to the top edge, you can do the handle, both outside and the inside of the handle. Once I've made it all the way around my mug, with my first coat, I'm going to do a second coat going the opposite direction. So in this case, I'm going to go from left to right on the second coat of the mug. The important thing to remember here is that you cannot apply your second coat until the first coat of underglaze is matte and no longer shiny. That's how you can tell that it is dry enough to apply the second coat. If you apply the second coat while the first coat is still wet, you're not actually adding any more material to the surface of the mug. You're just spreading around the wet underglaze from the first coat. Depending on how wet your mug is when you start this step, it might take longer for your underglaze to turn matte and lose its shine. So that's the trick to knowing when you are able to start the second coat. When I do this step, I try really hard to work in an even pattern. So I started at the top of the mug on this side and worked my way all the way down to the bottom. And then I move over to the right and start at the top and move down to the bottom again. If your underglaze is drying relatively quickly, it's easy to lose track of what you've covered and end up applying way more coats than you really want. We want a nice even coverage that has no transparent spots, so no see-through spots, but we don't want a thick coating of underglaze on the surface because we have to carve through all of that. I've let my mug sit overnight in order to make sure that the underglaze has set up and dried enough so that I'm not going to accidentally wipe underglaze off while I transfer my design to the mug. I've got my tracing paper design and I'm simply lining it up on the mug evenly all the way around. There should be a gap in your tracer that allows for your handle to fit right there. So I'm just lining it up here, making sure that it's not too high or low on the mug and that all my tracing fits on the mug. and that there's even amounts on either side of the handle. And then I'm going to use a piece of scotch tape to hold both of the ends of the tracer together just under the handle while I outline all of my line work, right? So I'm going to use a pencil for this step, or the pencil tool in your kit. So you have a wooden sharp tool, or you can just use a regular wooden pencil, not a mechanical pencil, okay? And I'm going to outline very carefully my line work. I want to work slowly. I want to be accurate and make sure that I'm getting all the lines. Attention to detail in this step is the key to a really quality Sgraffito project. So I'm going to work my way around, being careful of how much pressure I'm putting on the mug so that I don't crack anything. I'm being careful when I put it down in between marks that I'm not bumping the handle or that I'm not applying too much pressure that I would cause cracks in the mug. Let's just go ahead and pick up the pace here. Remember to make sure that you get every single line. The worst is you take off this paper and you realize you've missed a section of line work, and it can really throw off your design. So now I'm going to peel off the tape and slowly peel off the tracer. It sticks a little bit depending on how wet your underglaze is, but it should peel off relatively easy. And there will be a little bit of underglaze on your tracer if that's normal, but you shouldn't be missing any kind of chunks, and you should see that the line work is kind of compressed, and so a darker color than the rest of the mug. Your next step would be to begin scratching the design into or through the color. So to see how to do that, check out part 2 of this video to see which tools you should use and also some of the different line work or patterns you can make.